Okay, let's get started. My name is David Larson. I am the Deputy General Counsel at the Illinois Workers' Compensation Commission. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning for another demo and question and answer session for Release 3 of CompFile. As everyone is aware, the go-live date for Release 3 is 1 week away, April 21st. Beginning on that date, you are all in CompFile. I want to mention a few housekeeping items before we kick off here. Beginning tonight, at the close of business, CompFile will be inaccessible to our users. We have to take the system down in order to push the new features and functions for Release 3. So again, today is your last day to submit a settlement contract for review and approval in CompFile. The system will be down from April 15th through April 20th, and then we will be bringing it back up on the 21st so that you can make all your filings in the system. Another item I wanted to note, we have been receiving quite a few reports from our arbitrators that attorneys are continuing to email their motions and petitions and other filings directly to the arbitrators for status calls taking place after May 9th. So when we announced CompFile, the go-live date for Release 3, a few weeks ago, we sent around a logistics document that's also available on our website. And on that document, it indicated that beginning for May 10th status calls and all status calls thereafter, you must have submitted your motion or petition in CompFile. So I just want to repeat that. If you have sent or emailed an arbitrator or a motion petition for a status call taking place on May 10th or after, you will need to resubmit that in CompFile beginning next Wednesday when Release 3 goes live. We'll probably send out a communication about that to attorneys later today. So for today's agenda, there's a few topics that we wanted to discuss with you. The first is how CompFile delivers notice. This is a question that we've been receiving quite a bit. And at the top here, Connor Gallagher, one of our panelists, is going to walk through some of the ways that you receive notice in CompFile. So he's going to give you some advice and best practice tips for tracking the activity of your cases in CompFile. After that presentation, we're going to transition into the demo. And as you can see here, we're going to do a demonstration of filing motions, filing a petition for review, transcript authentication in CompFile, and then we're going to demonstrate the new call sheets that will be available to everyone in CompFile beginning on the 21st. So with me today, as I mentioned, is Connor Gallagher, Matt Bryant, Fran Davis, and Beatrice Atwater. We will be answering any questions you might have throughout the demonstration. So please feel free to use the question and answer function and send those questions along throughout today's presentation. As always, this presentation is being recorded and will be available to you on our CompFile YouTube channel. And you can find a link to the recording on the IWCC website on the CompFile implementation page, which again is www.iwcc.il.gov/CompFile. So to start today, as I mentioned, Connor Gallagher is just going to walk through a quick presentation on how CompFile delivers notice. Connor, if you want to take it away.
Thanks, David. Good morning, everyone. So as Dave mentioned, our first agenda topic is how CompFile delivers notice. And we very purposely made it the first agenda topic because, as you'll see as we go through the rest of today's demonstration, there'll be a recurring theme of places where CompFile delivers notice and how it delivers notice. And so to start off, we figured we'd level set and just kind of reestablish the basic understanding of who gets notice, when notice is sent, and how it works on a level, on a basic level. I've been advertising in some of these other meetings that we've had, that we've been getting a lot of questions, right, about notice, and I've been saying, come to the April 14th meeting and we'll talk about it. And so now this is the time where we're talking about it. So again, there will be a lot of recurring themes about notice in the course of today's demo. So I'm going to switch my screen share here to another presentation. Okay, and are the other panelists seeing a presentation that says how CompFile delivers notice?
We are, Connor.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. I want to make this present nicely. Doesn't seem to want to do that. Okay, well, I'll just present it like this then.
It looks good, Connor.
Okay, thanks. So how CompFile delivers notice. Okay, so let's start with basic understanding of how to track notice in CompFile. So this is something that we haven't talked about in a lot of the demos thus far, and it's important to bring it up again. So in addition, right, CompFile is going to send certain email notices, and that's covered in a later slide, but CompFile itself has several ways where within the system you can see filings that are coming in and the various dates associated with them. So if you were on the Wikla demo about a week ago, towards the end, I started demoing some of the different motion views, things like motions received in my cases, right? We've developed views that are available not only to attorneys, but to law firm administrators, so non-attorneys, non-attorney CompFile users, where they can go in and see, all right, I need to see all the motions that were filed across all of the law firm's cases, right? I'm going in, and it's essentially a way to think of it is, right, when the mailman shows up and gives you a stack of mail, somebody's job is to go through that stack of mail and determine how things need to get routed, right? So if you think about the different motion views in CompFile, and we'll see those later in today's demo, right? We have things like motions received in my firm's cases. That's essentially the stack of mail that the mailman is handing to you, right? And if it's a support person's job, a non-attorney's job, to go through that stack of mail and determine, all right, who needs to be alerted based on a filing that came in, when does somebody need to appear and on a WebEx or in person for a hearing, right? That's going to be available to you to sort through in a pretty user-friendly way. And the nice thing about these views is you have things like date filters, date sorting. You have the ability to search based on case name and case number. So in a lot of ways, it's better than that stack of mail that you're getting from the mailman because you have a way to comb through that list and find the things that you need to look at. Okay, so we're going to see that later on in the presentation, right? So there's a lot to be said for using, going into CompFile and seeing, all right, what are the things that are coming in, and how can I track separate from email, right? How can I track the things that are coming in? And that's going to be something that we'll be, revisiting, as I said, throughout the course of today's demo. Is this, going into CompFile and actually seeing the things separate from an email, the things that have been filed, who received them, what's the outcome, all that good stuff. This next slide talks about who receives email notice, right? And we've said this in a lot of our demos and presentations thus far, that attorneys who are party to a case, that's the primary folks who are receiving email notice. And when I say email notice, right, I'm talking about confirmation that a filing was scheduled or filing was filed. And if it was something that was placed on a call, right, a status call, review call, whatever, that you're getting an email telling you, all right, this is when you need to appear, right? CompFile sends emails to some other folks, right? If you, as you're all aware, with settlement contracts, if you're a petitioner's attorney and you have your client e-signing a settlement contract, CompFile will send an email to that represented petitioner to log in and e-sign a settlement contract, right? And I want to make that distinction that that's not actually an email notice. That's just a email, to get them in to sign the filing, right? CompFile is not going to send that petitioner, that represented petitioner, any emails about, when a filing is submitted or when settlement contract is approved or anything like that. The main thing to take away is that it's the attorneys who are receiving emails, right? And it's attorneys who are party to a case. And I've listed here the ways in which attorneys become party to a case. Okay. And, we've also said that pro se petitioners, they're going to be required to use CompFile. They're going to be required to make their filings in CompFile. And as such, they will be receiving emails too. Okay. And pro se petitioners, I made mention of this, I think 2 weeks ago, right? They have a way in which they get added to cases, which is this, what we're calling a pro se appearance process. And there's going to be a whole subsection of IWCC's website that talks about that. And it'll be available. So especially if you're respondent counsel and you're dealing with a pro se petitioner, you'll have, if they're trying to ask questions of you and you're not their representation, right, you'll be able to direct them to this one website that'll tell them everything that they need to know in order to get into CompFile, start making filings, start receiving notice. Okay, so I just want to reemphasize that about pro se petitioners and how they get added into CompFile. But all that said, right, on the highest level, CompFile is sending email notice to attorneys and pro se petitioners. Okay. So that means that CompFile is not sending emails to all these other people. Attorneys who aren't party to a case, law firm administrators, right? And you can register, as you're all aware, or as I hope everybody's aware, right? You could be registered as a law firm administrator and be a practicing attorney and appear on cases as a practicing attorney. But you can also be a law firm administrator who doesn't have an ARDC number and who does not have that e-filer web role. And if you have neither of those, then you're not able to, make filings on a case or receive notice in CompFile, email notice of case activity. Okay. And as we said before, and I'll say it again here, you should not be in the business of giving, if you're a practicing attorney and you want your support person, right, your paralegal, your office administrator, whomever, to make filings in CompFile for you, you should not be giving your support staff person your ARDC number to put in their CompFile account. The ARDC number should only be put or added to the CompFile account for the person that actually has that ARDC number, so that practicing attorney. I also mentioned, right, I mentioned a little bit ago that represented petitioners, right, they're never going to receive email notice, right? The only thing that represented petitioners can see, excuse me, in CompFile, if they're logged in, they see a page where they have applications that need their e-signature if they've been asked to e-sign an application, or same thing with a settlement contract where they've been asked to e-sign, right? So when they log in, they only see two buttons, applications and settlements. They'll also be able to access the new case search page, right? Similar to how we have the case docket search page today, where you can go and learn information about a case. They'll be able to do that, but really anybody can do that. You don't need a CompFile account to do that. So petitioners who are represented will be able to stay abreast of case happenings, but they won't actually be able to see the the actual content of the filing being made, and the outcomes of it. They'll just see that a filing was made on a case, right? Very similar to how information is represented on the case search page today. Same thing with respondent e-signers. I know there have been a lot of questions about if a respondent is e-signing a settlement contract, that they want to get email to say that a settlement contract has been approved, or basically more emails about what's happening with the settlement contract. And as of right now, there are no plans for sending other emails. I will say that might be a space where we might consider adding a couple more emails, but for right now, a respondent who e-signs the settlement contract, right, they're not going to receive any other emails about any other case activity. All right, no other notice emails. And then finally, and I think this goes without saying, if you don't have a CompFile account, you're not getting emailed, right? And it's very important to emphasize that that's actually a limitation of the product that we're using. So the way that CompFile works is that there needs to be an established identity of a person in order to send them an email, right? When you all registered for CompFile, you created that unique user identity and you associated your email address with it. And CompFile is unable to send an email to an email address that it doesn't already know about, right? And I'll be honest, right? That has been something that we've tried to work around, and we've talked to our development team to see, how could we circumvent that, right? Could we do things like put two email addresses on one account? And there are limitations of the product, right? I want to emphasize that, we've been hearing these questions about, can an email go to multiple places? Can we CC somebody on an email, on email notice? Can we add two email addresses to the same account? We've heard all of this, and we've sat down with our development team on several occasions to determine the feasibility of that. And it's just not feasible, right? There are limitations with the product. And, in order to stay on time and on budget with CompFile, we've come up with other ways of finding notice, or of getting notice, that, like what I mentioned before, where you'll have all these motion views available to you. When you log into CompFile, you'll have essentially that stack of mail that you'll be able to sort through. And honestly, there are other ways outside of CompFile that you can manage how emails get routed. And we've talked about these in some other meetings that we've had, and I'm going to show just a couple examples here. And I've also spoken to a couple of practicing law firms, right, over the course of this project. And I've heard things that they're doing in order to distribute emails amongst their staff. So what I'm going to be showing you today is partially based in what people are already doing, right? So I think one takeaway from this is that there are law firms out there that are making this work now, and they're getting emails to who they need to get them to today, right, with the settlement contract process. So don't be afraid to ask around and see, all right, yeah, how are you managing your CompFile notice? What do you do, right? Because people are creative, and they've been able to make the system work. So, and I'm just gonna, like I said, I'm gonna show just a few examples based on things that I've seen and things that I know can work, to get notice distributed around. Before I move to the next slide, I want to just take a breather and see if any of the panelists have seen any questions that have already come in that warrant just a discussion.
So Connor, I think you're gonna a couple of questions that have come in, I think you'll cover in the next slides. But one person commented that they created an alias email, and I know that that's a little bit beyond what we were planning to cover, but that is certainly something that if you're so inclined, you can search up how to create an alias email, and that will definitely work as well.
Haha. Well, that's great, and thanks, Matt. That's good to hear. Right before this meeting, I was actually talking with the other panelists about how some law firms are doing that, and I didn't include it in this presentation today just because it's a little bit more technical. It's something that, you know, if you are a member of a large law firm, it would involve probably involve getting your IT department, getting them involved. So what I'm going to show here is some steps that ideally that you by yourself as just a person with an email address and a person with a CompFile account will be able to do. So I'll go ahead and transition into that now. So at the risk of sounding like a broken record, right, I really want to emphasize and re-emphasize and re-emphasize and re-emphasize how powerful email forwarding rules are. Every modern email provider has the ability to set up forwarding rules, right? I did this last night. This screenshot that we're looking at is with my own personal Office 365 email address, right? This is literally what I'm looking at when I open up my web browser. I click a little gear icon to open settings, and I can set up forwarding rules. And what I'm showing here is what I'm specifying in this forwarding rule is an email that comes from wcc.noreply@illinois.gov. This is the CompFile notice email address. All right. All emails that are automatically generated by CompFile and sent out, they come from this email address. Okay. That's the email address. So the forwarding rule is as simple as saying an email that comes from this email address, I want to forward to somebody else, right? And that could be one person, that could be multiple people, and you would just specify all the email addresses that you want. And it's important to remember that with a forwarding rule, right, it might vary depending on your email provider, but for the most part, a forwarding rule means that the person who was originally sent the email, right? So in this case, it would be the attorney whose email address is on their CompFile account. That attorney would also get a copy of the email in their inbox, but that email would be forwarded, essentially copied and forwarded to their whoever else they want, whoever else they specify in this box, okay? So this is something that's not hard to do, right? I want to say it took me 3 minutes, and I'm not exaggerating. I want to say it took me 3 minutes to set this up with my personal email address, right? And I realized that not everybody's using Office 365. It might look different for you, but I've also included another example, right? This is from Gmail, right? A very popular email provider. And you have the ability to set up very similar forwarding rules in Gmail. One thing I learned about Gmail that's actually pretty nice is when you add a forwarding address, it sends an email to the person that you've specified in the forwarding address and asks them to confirm, yes, I want to receive forwarded emails from this email address, right? So there's a security step involved that prevents, let's say you fat finger the email address, and that way it prevents sending emails to somebody that doesn't confirm it, right? So you're not accidentally sending emails to nowhere, or worse yet, emails to the wrong person. But again, this took me, I want to say 5 minutes to set up in Gmail. It's the same thing, right? Basically, all mail that comes from this email address, wcc.noreply@illinois.gov, just forward it to one or more people. Remember, this is the email address that all CompFile emails come from, okay? If you want, you could get kind of fancy, right? And a lot of email providers, they have even more customizable ways of managing how mail gets forwarded. You can do things like if the subject line contains certain words, if the body text of the email contains certain words, then I want to forward it, right? I didn't bother going into all the details here today because I'm just showing you at the base level how you can set up a forwarding rule. But if you wanted to, right, and you got more comfortable with it, you could explore, hey, I only want to forward emails that have to do with decisions, right? And you could say, I want to forward emails that have the word decision in the subject line. You could explore doing that, right? You could use a lot of these email forwarding tools. You can add multiple clauses, right? To say, I want all emails from the wcc.noreply email address that also contain the word decision in the subject line. Only if those two criteria are met, then I want to forward an email. So there's really a lot to be said about the power of forwarding rules, right? And I realize that this is something that law firms will have to set up on their own, but there's a lot there. And I would really encourage you, if you haven't explored it, just to explore what forwarding rules are available to you now with your current email provider.
Hey, Connor, a quick jump in here. There was a question about, can you just simply forward the email yourself? And the answer is yes, you can. Connor's discussing an auto forward. So what this does is it's a way for your email system to automatically forward an email. You can always, if the attorney gets an email, they can always simply just forward it. Just hit the forward button. And a lot of firms are set up where the assistant can view the attorney's inbox as well. And that's not something we're talking about, but that's not an uncommon practice where you share your inbox with your assistant. And that's not something we'll cover today, but if you're comfortable with that, that is another way to have your inbox be monitored by someone else. And then you wouldn't even have to ever forward anything or set up any forwarding rules.
Thanks for that, Matt. And then the other thing that I wanted to show here, and again, this is a very low-tech solution, is that, and this is totally allowed, right? You can do this, is if you are an attorney, right, and you have your attorney account in CompFile with your ARDC number, but you want your assistant or somebody else to be receiving emails, just make your CompFile email address your assistant's email address. You can do that. That's totally allowed. Some law firms are doing that today. This only works though, right? It's important to point out this only works if that assistant doesn't have their own CompFile account. So remember, one email address can only be associated to one CompFile account. So this email address can only be associated to this CompFile account. It can't be associated to multiple accounts at the same time.
And Connor, just another pointer here. It would only work if the assistant assisted a single attorney. So if one assistant had 3 attorneys, that you couldn't list all 3 attorneys' address as the assistant's address. So as Connor was saying, CompFile will only allow an account to be created with an email address one time. You can't reuse an email address.
Yes, that's a good point, right? So this would only work really for some of the smaller firms, or if you only have, if it's one assistant per attorney. But this is something that I've spoken to law firms and I know that people are doing today. So this is something that's allowed to you. I've also spoken to, and I didn't cover it here, but I've spoken to other law firms where they've come up with this whole new email way of managing their email addresses, where they essentially come up with like a bunch of numbered email addresses, like attorney 1, attorney 2, attorney 3, and they'll, when they register for CompFile, they'll use those generic email addresses. And as Matt indicated just a minute ago, right, you can have a lot of email providers allow multiple users to access the same inbox, right? And that's managed outside of CompFile, that's managed by your email provider. But essentially what these law firms do is they create a generic email address to which they give a lot of their users access. And that way, anytime a filing gets made or anytime a filing gets made, either by that attorney or by one of their opponents, it goes to that generic inbox, and then whoever it has access to that inbox can monitor it and essentially track the notice, right? And that's a little bit more advanced, right? That's something that would involve probably getting your IT department involved. But this is something that if you are a smaller firm and you have one assistant that just needs to track that one attorney's emails, this is a very low-tech way that you can satisfy that. Okay. So really, I think the main takeaway that I want to provide here with this presentation is that please explore what forwarding rules are available to you from your current email provider. And secondly, right, as we'll see, going back to this slide, there are ways within CompFile to track what filings are received and when. And we're going to transition to showing some of that now, okay? So I'm actually going to hand off to Matt Bryant, who's going to be showing us how to file some motions, how to file petition for review, how to file transcript authentication, and all of the various notices that are delivered along along the way. For a moment, we're resuming with Matt Bryant's demo of filing motions, filing petitions for review, and transcript authentication and viewing call sheets. I'm going to disable the chat function in the meeting, and we'll let Matt take it away.
Okay, thanks, Connor. Thanks everyone for your patience. We'll jump right back in here and get started on this. So this is the logon screen for CompFile. Some of this you have seen before if you've attended prior demos. The first thing we're going to cover is filing a motion, and we have covered this in other presentations for WCLA and ICL and some other presentations. So you may be familiar with this, but we won't spend a lot of time on filing motions because, as you'll see, it's a pretty simple and straightforward process. Before I log on, you'll notice that this page looks like the settlements logon page today. So it's not changing at all. It's just that you'll see more buttons after you log on. One of the things you'll see before you log on is right here. It says new case docket search and call sheets search. Say that 10 times fast. So this allows you a quick link to doing a lookup of case information without logging on, or doing a lookup of call sheets without logging on. So there will be other ways to get to these quick links on the Commission's website, but this is a simple way to see them. You won't see case filings unless you log on and unless you've appeared in a case. So if you want to see a case filing and you're not an attorney of record, you'll need to go through the standard process of requesting that filing for perhaps through a FOIA request or from counsel. But only attorneys of record can actually see the filings after they log on. This just allows you to look at who the assigned arbitrator is, when the status call is, what the case status is, things like that. Okay, so I'm logging on as an attorney. And the first thing I'm going to do is just show you when you land, after you log on. You'll see on the top right, this is who has logged on. So if you're a law firm administrator and you work for several attorneys and you want to remember, okay, who am I logged on as? Right up here in the top right, you'll see that this person is John Doe. And you'll notice that there's a few more buttons here. The big one that we're going to be talking about today is motions and other filings, this third one here. But there are several things, you know, the app button, the case button, etc. So what I want to start with is this motions and other filings, because Connor spent quite a good portion of time explaining how this is like a pseudo inbox for you. So it's almost like a generic inbox. The first thing you do when you click the button is you'll get to the motions in my cases. So you can change what you're seeing by clicking this little down arrow. And I want to please someone confirm that you can see the drop down on my share.
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. So as you can see, there's quite a number of drop downs, and it might be a little overwhelming at first, but I think you'll get the hang of this pretty quickly because there's a pattern. So motions in my cases would be motions in a case in which I have an appearance. So I've either filed an app and an appearance, or I've entered an appearance as a respondent attorney. It's all the motions in and out, things that I filed and things that were filed against me. But as you can see, you go right down, it says motions received in my cases. So these would be things that have come in and filed on me in my cases. And then here, my filed motions would be ones that I have filed on my opponents. And then here is where I think it gets pretty interesting in tracking all the activity in your firm. And I think it's going to be very helpful as a general inbox of what's going on. So you'll see motions in my firm's cases. These would be motions that any attorney in my firm has filed or has been filed on them. So in and out. Motions received in my firm's cases is basically an inbox for your firm. And then my firm's filed motions would be motions that were filed by all the attorneys in my firm. So the received in my firm's cases works like an inbox. And as you can see, there's a lot of columns here. You see the case number, the case name, who the arbitrator is or the commissioner, what type of filing it is, who filed it. And then here's a good one, date filed, that I think is going to be very helpful for you. So if you just click on that column, it sorts it from oldest to newest, or if you click it again, it sorts it from newest to oldest, and you'll see the little down arrow. And as you notice here, these are all the filings that have been made in my firm's cases today. And it gives the time of filing. So the earliest one was 11 a.m. and the most recent one was 11:30 a.m. And then if you sometimes you have to move this view with your mouse, you know, over to the right, or your right arrow. But if you go to the right, you'll see a little down arrow, and then that gives you the ability to look at the service on that filing, or you can also see if an order has been issued on that case, like a ruling, like, you know, motion, maybe it's a motion to withdraw and it's an agreed motion, and the arbitrator just grants it by just basically saying granted. So you would see that order by clicking on it when it happens, or you would see the attachments, which would be the actual motion. So let's just look at this one right here. So in this case, Richard Pace, and by the way, before I go much further, I want to point out that if you see a case that looks like yours, don't panic. I'm not making a ruling in your case or a filing in your case. We're in a training environment. So up here on the top, you'll see it says IWCC train. This is a training environment, but we seed that environment with actual cases in order to replicate, you know, as close to a real environment as possible, so that when we test this, we can test it and you know, fully test it. So if you see, if Richard Pace is your case, don't worry. It's still everything is fine. We're not taking any action on it. So this is a case. So remember, I'm logged in as John Doe. up here on the right, John Doe, and this is the Pace case. So this is a arbitrator Amarillo's case. It looks like it was an other type of filing. So that's interesting. Remember there on the notice of motion, there's a little other box. So we'll need to look at this and find out what it is. This is the attorney who filed it, Mary Sularud. So I'm John Doe, so I did not file it, but Mary Sularud filed it. And she filed it this morning at 11. The setting of this case is Chicago, and it looks like it is on the next call. It would be on this case on June the 4th. And the status of this motion is on the call. And what that status means is that it will be considered or called, if you will, by arbitrator Amarillo on June the 4th. Well, what is this about? So let's open it up. So on the right side, the first thing we want to do, I would suggest, is let's look at the motion itself. View attachments. And so what that does is it opens up the document, and this document is called a motion. And then when you click on the PDF of that motion, it in Chrome, and the Chrome is the preferred browser that we recommend. Down on the bottom left, you'll see it's downloaded. You open that up, and there it is. It's just called a motion. Not a lot of information. This is just training. But here, this is the attachment that the attorney would have supplied. Mary Sularud would have said, you know, I hereby move to compel the petitioner to do X, or whatever the other type of motion is. This is, you know, where you would be able to get those details. All right, let me pause for a second and just ask the panelists if there are any questions that have come in. Okay, well, let's keep going. Richard Pace. Make sure I'm not muted. Yes, Richard Pace. Let's look at the next thing. Let's look at the notice of motion. So this would be the, and we covered this in a presentation last week, but just quickly, I'll just show you how you can download that. And this would essentially be it mirrors the form of motion of notice today that's served. Whoops, and there must be some problem I have with viewing this. So we did cover this last week. So what that did is it mirrors essentially the notice today of motion, and it has the case caption, and it explains what the case will be called on June the 4th. Lastly, you can look at CompFile service. So this shows that this filing was served on this person on April the 14th at 11:04 a.m. So this gives you a quick view of the service in this case. Excuse me. The working from home stuff is for the birds. Okay, let me go back to my motions and other filings, and then I want to go back to the motions received in my firm's cases. And then we were looking at the Pace case, and remember we have to sort by date filed. And then we're looking at the Pace case, and lastly, I wanted to show you, you can also you can view the order on motion. Now, this particular case doesn't have an order yet, so when you open it up, you'll see there's nothing here. But when this case does have an order, like if you look at this one up here, it says withdrawn. So this particular 19B was withdrawn. So if you look at the order of motion on that one, click the hyperlink, you will see this is the order that came out. And it says order withdrawn. And then it says additional information withdrawn at request of petitioner's attorney. And it says who it was served on and when. So that just gives you a quick overview of how you can use this view to see all of the filings that have come in on your cases. So if you're worried, maybe I've missed something, maybe an email has come and my attorney didn't forward it to me, you can log on, you can sort these by date, and then you can look in date order of everything that's come in on your firm's cases. Now, you may think, well, there's hundreds of attorneys in my firms. Yes, that's true. And that would result in probably a lot of activity. but you can use this search feature to search for any term in here. So if there's a particular case that you're interested in, you can search for it here. But the main thing is this date search, and essentially that's like an inbox for your cases. Okay, so next we're going to shift to filing a petition for review. But before we do, I wanted to just pause for a second and see if there are any questions that have come in.
I think people are just eager, based on some of the questions, Matt, to see how the actual how something gets filed. And you'll want to, when you're showing the filing, just show that when you're preparing the notice of motion, that you can name non-CompFile parties, just so that you can satisfy motion outside of CompFile with the notice of motion that CompFile generates.
Okay, thank you, Connor. I'll definitely do that. All right, well, let's get started and make a filing. So I'm going to log out as John Doe and log in as a different attorney to make this filing, make these filings. And I said petition for review, but the first thing I'm going to do is file a 19B. So I've logged out. I'm going to log on as petitioner counsel. Okay, so there's two ways that you can make filings. You can go to your case list, and then you identify the case that you want, and you make a filing, and that's what we're going to do. But I want to show you another way to do it. You can click on motions and other filings, and then you can click on initiate filing, and then you select what you're trying to do right here. And then when you do this, you have to type in the case number. So this requires you to input the case number, and when you do, that case will pop up and you can proceed. Or alternatively, and what I'm going to show you, you can just go to the case itself. So the case that we want to use is the Sean McCoy case. So it's down here, Sean McCoy v. O'Malley's. You can also, like I said, take this case number and you input it into that motions page that I was just showing you. All right, let's go ahead and say initiate filing in case. So over here on the right side, there's a few options. You can amend an app here. You can just look at the case details. You can initiate a filing, which would mean file a motion, or you can click follow. And what that means, follow, it's a way for you to highlight this case. And then one of your views would be my cases that I follow. And these are ones that you're particularly interested in. But let's say initiate filing. And this is going to take us to this essentially this gateway page. And this allows you to do a variety of things. If you want to do a petition for review of a decision, obviously you choose petition for review. If you want to file a motion or any kind of petition, it's right here. Other filings would be things that don't need to be called. So in other words, these are filings like briefs, responses. They're not going to be put on a call and scheduled by an arbitrator or a commissioner. And then we have a special button here for stipulated substitution. This is a little bit more, it requires a little bit more information about who's leaving the case, who's coming onto the case. And so that's why we have this special button for that. What we're going to do is file a 19B in this case. So the first thing, you have a drop down and you can see the different choices. All of these filings are ones that need to be scheduled. So they're going to be put onto a status call. They could also be put before a commissioner's review call. So depending on the status of this case, if it's on review or not, you're going to see on the next screen, you'll have a choice. But what we want to do is file a 19B before the arbitrator in this case. And this arbitrator you'll see right here is Arbitrator Gillespie. So let's choose the 19B. This tells you who the attorneys are on the case. This screen persists across the pages so that you can always have a quick view of who the attorneys are. So you click Next. This is where you're going to input the call. So this particular case, as you recall, it's in front of arbitrator Gillespie, but if you wanted it to be in front of a commissioner, for example, maybe the case has closed many months ago. Arbitrator Gillespie entered that final decision, but you wanted to file a 19 H8A, you would make the filing and then you would choose the review call that it would go on. But we're going to choose the status call. And I wanted to point out that this next box will let you choose the call where it will be called. So this is going to show you all of Arbitrator Gillespie's upcoming calls. And the reason why it looks a little bit busy is because it's a 19B. Now in 19B, you can actually go onto a different location of Arbitrator Gillespie's and get that 19B considered in front of him. But you don't have to do that, but it gives you that choice. But we're urgent here, so we're going to choose May the 20th. And then down here, it says list any recipients in the field below that will be served this notice outside of CompFile. So let's say that you also plan to serve this on the TPA, for example. So you want to serve it on counsel, John Doe, but you also want to serve it on the TPA. You could put Sedgwick Service Company, and then you could put attention Tammy Smith, something like that. And this would then show up in the TO line on the notice of motion. So now this is where you attach the actual 19B. So you have drafted a 19B explaining the circumstances, maybe why the petitioner needs these benefits. You could explain, maybe they're not getting paid, they're out of work, etc. This is the substance of the petition itself. So you would add this, and then you can say select petition for immediate hearing. Notice that you could also include other supporting documentation. So if, for example, wage records, a medical report, you could select this and attach them one at a time right here. We're just going to attach the petition. I'm going to say 19B petition. And then this is what you've drafted and saved as a PDF onto your computer. So this is a 19B petition. I've got something queued up right here, 19B petition. Click add, and then click upload. And now you're almost ready to submit this. If you wanted to add a medical record, you could by adding it right here. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that real quick.
Matt, before you finally submit this, do you mind going back to the previous page in that text box where you can name other parties on the notice of motion? Can you just talk again about the type of information you put in that field? We're getting questions about, do I put the full address? Do I put an email address in that field? Can I put a respondent name? Can I put an employer name? Can you just go over that again?
You bet, Connor. So let me just go back. Before I do, what I want to do is I want to go to the Commission's website. And if you look at the notice of motion today, you will see that right here, there's a place where you type in the petitioner name and the respondent's name, the case number, etc. Right here, you see the word to. So you can put in here whatever you want to input here, right? And so what we heard in talking to people is that this would often be used to identify other recipients of this notice. This notice will be served on the attorneys in this case. So it'll be served on the petitioner and the respondent right up here. But if you want it to also be served on someone else, you can put that here. So this depends on your practice. So you would input in this box however you do that today. And let me just show you in CompFile how to do it. So I put Sedgwick Service Company, attention Tammy Smith. You could leave it blank if you want. If you are not in the practice today of including anything here, you don't need to. If you want to put, counsel, something like that, then that is going to, when after you file it, it's going to show up like this. Let's say that you wanted to put, you wanted to put the names. You wanted to put John Doe, counsel, or respondent, big company, right? Then that would mirror something like this. John Doe, counsel for big, respondent, big company. So again, today, this is the form that you're using. Whatever you input here, you can mirror that here. But keep in mind that this is going to be served on the petitioner and the respondent through CompFile. So you don't need to put the petitioner and the respondent's names and addresses here because it's going to be handled for you. Do you think that addresses the questions that have come in, Connor, or should we talk about it a little more?
I think that addresses the questions that have come in. Thanks.
You bet. When we've tested this, I'm in the habit of just putting counsel because that's essentially who you're serving on. But again, it's flexible. All right, so we're just prior to submission. So I've attached my, it's loading, I've attached my 19B, I've attached a medical report. If you want to just take a peek at them, you can view them here just to make sure, did I get the right thing? Or you could remove it if you got the wrong thing. And you hit submit. And that's it. You can print the notice of motion right away by clicking that print button. And as I was saying in Google, what happens is this appears. So this is what that notice of motion looks like. It looks very similar. I'll show you the form today to this form. Remember, I put the word counsel, that shows up right there. I remember I selected May the 20th, Arbitrator Gillespie. His particular call on May the 20th is in Bloomington. You'll remember that this case, let me go back to the case. That this case, it's the McCoy case. This particular case is in Rock Island. So the reason that this notice of motion is in Bloomington is because I selected May the 20th, and that's when Arbitrator Gillespie is in Bloomington. So you can speed up a 19B and get it considered, but you need to be aware that you may be choosing a call in a different location. These are all virtual anyway, so it probably doesn't matter too much, but you just need to be aware of if you're in a downstate location and you're filing a 19B and you want to get it docketed soon, that may mean that you're going to have to go to a different location in Arbitrator Gillespie's zone. But that's not CompFile, that's practicing workers' comp law in Illinois. So then this shows that Mary Sularud signed this. It shows, and it shows the case caption, and it says, oh, right here, the petition for immediate hearing. So, and then if you wanted to see the additional information about that filing, you can go back to the case details. And so let me just show you quickly how to jump to those case details. Just go to My Cases, you find the case, here it is, the O'Malley case. You open it up by clicking on the number, and this just gives you a very general overview of this case. It's a Gillespie case. If it's consolidated, they'll be listed here. If there were a settlement on the case, it would be listed here. This shows you the party, who the respondent and petitioner are, who the attorneys are, when the status calls are. These are the filings, the arbitration filings. Here's the filing right here, May the 14th. We just did this. If you wanted to actually view it, you just click on View. And remember, this is the 19B petition. Here's the filing, and here's the medical report that we attached. So this is the notice of motion. This is the 19B petition that I attached, and here's the medical report that I attached. If this case were on review, you could look at review call events. There were decisions. Here's the app that was filed in this case. This just gives you an overview of the case. Okay, so that covers how to make a motion in the case and how you know that it was served. I do want to show the email that came in though, before we go too much further. So give me 1 second. Okay, let me just share a different screen. I gotta find my mail. I don't want to hit disconnect, that's for sure. Okay, so this is my email inbox, and right here is the email that this email is to inform you of filing in the case. The filing, petition for immediate hearing under 19B, filed on April 14th, 12:07 p.m. I'm in Eastern time, but that is actually accurate. On May the 20th at 9 a.m. in the Bloomington Government Center, this petition is going to be heard or called, excuse me. All right, let me go back to CompFile, and as I'm doing that, Connor and the other panelists, if we've got some questions, please jump in.
Got a lot of questions about preparing multiple filings at once, and just to restate, I know as a matter of convenience today, a lot of people check multiple boxes on the notice of motion in order, but in CompFile, each filing will be its own standalone filing. So essentially, you're checking one box on the notice of motion, making one submission, and then doing another one right after that. And as we've seen, right, it's a very quick process to make a filing and then follow it up with another filing. There's probably 4 or 5 clicks involved in making a single filing. So I just want to say that, you have each filing is its own standalone filing. There's no batching of filings together.
Thanks, Connor. That's a good point. And one of the reasons why that's required is because CompFile will track the ruling on each individual thing. And what we heard is that arbitrators would sometimes, if there were multiple boxes checked on the notice of motion, they'd have to draw an arrow to the one box and say granted, and they draw an arrow to another box and they say withdrawn. So we didn't really have a good way of drawing those arrows, and so each of them deserved their own disposition by the arbitrator. So that's the main reason we did that. All right.
And sorry, I know we're running on time, but can you just briefly state that, we've got questions about, can I view the notice of motion before I submit the filing? And do I need to prepare a notice of motion outside of CompFile? Can you answer those 2 questions?
So you do not need to prepare a notice of motion outside of CompFile. You will be able to access that immediately after making the filing. And honestly, I don't remember. Let me just make a filing real quick. I don't think you can view it before you hit submit, but let's just do one real quick. I'll show you how simple it is. Remember that paste case? So we're gonna just quickly, we'll file let's do a fees and penalties. Put it on the call, we'll put this one. Notice this one's not an 19B, so it's only showing just the next 3 status calls for this case. Counsel here. Right, so you don't see the notice of motion until you hit submit. So you have to, if you do want to serve it on someone outside of CompFile, right after you hit submit, you would be able to download it immediately. I'll just choose motion. Here we go. And then you would see it right here, print notice of motion. And then you could immediately download that and serve it on Sedgwick or whoever outside of the system you wanted to serve. But as you can see, John Doe, I'm logged in as Mary Sularud, but John Doe got served with this. Okay, let's go ahead and jump on petitions for review because I know we need to cover that. And I'm going to file a petition for review in the Isaiah injured worker case. So initiate filing in case. So this is a case where a decision has been filed. I don't like it, and so I'm going to seek review of it. So you can see here it has not been assigned to a commissioner. It's assigned to an arbitrator you're not familiar with, our panelist Connor Gallagher. So sometimes we assign ourselves to be arbitrators and commissioners as we test things. So I'll say I'm the petitioner. I want oral argument, requesting two transcript copies. Here, if you click the search button, you'll see all of the decisions in that case. For a little while, for about a month, if you're filing a petition for review, you may not see a decision here. This is an optional field, and the reason you wouldn't see it is because that decision was issued prior to CompFile. But in about 30 days, that won't be relevant anymore. But here, there was a decision in CompFile. You see, hit select. But if you're appealing a decision or seeking review of a decision that was issued, say, yesterday, it will not show up here, but this is an optional field. It's not mandatory. So here we're going to add the actual substance of our petition for review. Where did I put that? Here it is, petition for review. Okay, and this says that this PFR is on there. You can have a peek at it by clicking this little right arrow to view it to make sure that it's what you want. Here's who's going to get it. And you hit submit, and it's done. That petition review has been filed. So at this case now will be the first thing that will happen is the review desk will order a transcript in this case, and then that transcript will be prepared. It'll be an electronic transcript, and then you will then get an email notification of when that transcript is ready and what the return date on review for that case is. And I'm going to show you how to authenticate that, how to upload the authentication. But before I go there, I just wanted to point out that if you file a petition for review today, it's on paper. If it was a paper petition for review, that transcript will be a paper transcript. So this is a very simple way to remember this. If you filed a petition for review last week, one day this week, you filed it on paper, that will require a paper authentication. The return date might be sometime in early May or late May even. That authentication, you will need to file that with the commissioner, the assigned commissioner, and it will be outside of CompFile. So just to repeat, if it's a paper petition for review, it's going to be a paper authentication. So there's a little bit of a period here of about a month, 30 days, because that's your filing period, where the authentications and the transcripts will not be in CompFile. And that's because the petition for review is not in CompFile. But once all petitions for review are in CompFile, which will be starting next Wednesday, then that transcript will be provided to you electronically, and it will be authenticated by you in CompFile. So I'm going to show you how to authenticate a case. And I would imagine we've got some questions, but before we get to them, I want to just show you the authentication and the transcript process. So like I was saying, you'll get an email saying that a transcript is ready for you to authenticate and when the return date is. But I've got something queued up here. It's the Nachampasic case. So if you open up this case right here, this is that details page, right? It shows you that it's a arbitrator Napleton case, and it shows you that it's on review and that Commissioner Portella has this case. Here are the parties in the case. Here is the prior arbitration activity in that case. But then it shows you here it's a petition for review. So once that petition for review gets filed, it populates right here. If you wanted to look at it again, you can. Here's the decision. It was a 19B decision by the arbitrator Napleton. If you wanted to look at that, you can. This says when the proofs closed in that case, when the decision got issued. Here, you can look at it right here. But what I want to show you here is, here's the transcript. So this has been delivered, and now it needs to be authenticated. So the first thing that you would do is, and by the way, the payment process for transcripts is not changing. You would still deal directly with the court reporter on that. None of that is changing. The only thing that's changing is that it'll be delivered to you in an electronic format. So they'll be scanning the exhibits, doing all the work they do to record the hearing and collecting payment just like they do today. So the first thing, we're going to download that transcript. Here's that marks the first hearing. This is a pretty simple transcript. That's it. But this would look very different. And the first page of this transcript is going to be an authentication page. And that authentication page is what you and your opponent, whoever filed the petition for review, would, collect the signatures for their opponent and then come back here to this same page, and they would upload their signature, their signed authentication. And you only do this once. So whoever filed the petition for review would collect the authentication signatures for themselves and their opponent. Once that's done, they'd scan that and they'd come back and they'd upload it right here. So if both of you filed a petition for review, you will need to negotiate with yourself, who's going to do the uploading of the authentication form, but only one is uploaded. So transcript authentication page, and we'll just say authentication page. Maybe I didn't click it. There it is. Okay. Now you'll see that I've uploaded this, and if I wanted to look at it, I could hit this little download transcript, and I would see both the transcript and the authentication. But now that it's already in there, I hit authenticate, and that transcript has been authenticated. And now this case, this particular filing, let's just go back to the filing, petition for review. Go to motions and other filings. Let's see. How the heck do I? N-A-C-H-A-M. I can't remember how to spell that name. I picked someone with a name that yeah, how did I get that lucky? Okay, so as you can see, this is the petition for review. Its status is now orals, discussion to be set. So we requested oral, so presumably it'll be granted. And then Once it gets scheduled, you will get notification in CompFile that those orals were set. But you're all done. Your transcript is authenticated, and now you're just waiting for those to be set. Okay, the last thing we wanted to cover was call sheets, but I'm going to quickly hit that. But we've got just a little bit of time, scheduled time. We'll stay a little bit later to answer any questions that people have. But before we move to call sheets, though, I thought I'd pause and see if there were questions.
One question that we've gotten a few times is, in any filing that I'm uploading, do I need to add a proof of service? And the answer is you only need to provide a proof of service if you're serving or you intend to serve the filing to a party outside of CompFile. If the only people that need to be served that filing are the attorneys on the case and they've appeared on the case in CompFile, you do not need to upload a separate proof of service.
Thanks, Connor. Yeah, that's a good point. Excellent point. And whenever you're making a filing, the CompFile tells you who will get filed. So remember, in this case, if you're just going to initiate a filing, let's say another fee petition, because you want to do fees. There we go. This tells you right here who's going to get service. So you know right away, all right, that's respondent counsel. I'm petitioner counsel. That's who's going to be served in CompFile. If you also want to serve this on TPA, then you're going to have to and you want to file that proof of service. You're going to need to upload that. CompFile only serves attorneys that have appeared on the case. Any other questions, Connor, before we jump to call sheets?
I think just a general statement, and I'm taking the words out of Dave Larson's mouth here, but we're talking, and a lot of these that we're showing, these filings, right? There's a spot where you're making an upload, you're uploading a filing. And if you're uploading a fee petition or a request for hearing, right? That request for hearing would be the same form that's on our website today for request for hearing form, right? So you'll still be preparing that request for hearing document in whatever system you're using today, right? If you handwrite them, if you print them off and handwrite them and you scan it, and that's how you do your work, then you can continue to do it that way. If you have a document generation tool that generates requests for hearings based on your own law firm's management system, right? That'll be how you prepare requests for hearings today. And that'll be what you upload when you're filing a request for hearing into CompFile, right? CompFile will generate the notice of motion based on the thing you're uploading, but we're essentially, the long and short of it is we're still using the same forms that we're using today, right? The only thing that CompFile is generating for these motion filings is the notice of motion.
Thanks, Connor. So any other questions before we jump on call sheets? Okay. So if you go back to your login screen, you'll see that I'm logged on as an attorney, Mary Sularud, and you can see that, here's applications, cases, etc. Right over here, there's something called call sheets. You can also access this from the web directly, so you don't need to be logged on to do that. But if you are logged on, you hit that button and you'll come to a page that directs you to make some basic selections. So the first thing you have to do in order to see a call sheet using this tool, and this is just a tool, there are different ways that you can do this, but we're showing you the most direct and straightforward way, is you're going to have to make two selections. Tell us the setting and tell us the arbitrator, commissioner, or the panel. So you're going to see some results here that are going to be a little bit weird, like, Fran Davis or Matthew Bryant. That's me. I'm not an arbitrator. That's because of the test, but you can see some familiar names here. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose Arbitrator McLaughlin's Chicago calls. So when you filter down, let me find William McLaughlin. The first thing that happens, it takes a while because what you're doing is you're looking at all of Arbitrator McLaughlin's Chicago cases. So it's going to take a second here. And we're also in a training environment and not in production. So it's not that slow, but it's going to be a little slower. So the first thing you'll see is you'll see a whole bunch of status calls. And what this is showing you is it's essentially showing you that there's a lot of cases, 8,000 cases that meet these first two criteria. Well, that's too many. So what we want to see is we want to see just his status calls. So you just filter down a little bit further. And it's going to show you the cases that are on McLaughlin's Chicago calls. And then to further refine it, we're going to have to choose a date. So what I want to do is just select the next one, April 16th. That's in 2 days. One of the nice things about this is that this is going to show you a sequenced set of cases that are going to be called on April the 16th. So today, these sequence numbers are created roughly a month in advance of that call. And so what happens is as motions are filed within that month, they don't get they don't necessarily get properly recorded on that status call. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be recording motions as they come in real time, and then 3 days before the call, we're going to sequence them. And the reason that we're sequencing them is so that they're a little bit easier to call out. And the order that these get sequenced is, the 19Bs are going to be sequenced at the top. I didn't have one filed in front of arbitrator McLaughlin, so that doesn't show. Followed by all the red line cases, and then followed by the other motions in the case. And so it's going to be a little different the way that call sheets work, but but suffice it to say that all of the motions and red lines are going to be sequenced first, and then all the other cases will be sequenced. So if for some reason you feel like you can get something scheduled and you haven't actually made a filing on it, you can try, and you would just have to call that number out, number 890 or whatever. But if it's a motion or a red line case, they're just going to be sequenced right there. And you'll see this little 1.1. What this means is that these two cases are a consolidated set. So number 1 is the primary case, the oldest case in this. So it looks like arbitrator McLaughlin actually has a 1994 case. That's pretty amazing. But if you hit the little plus, it gives you a little more information about this particular case. And then 1.1 shows that this is a consolidated case and the Attorney General is working that case. The last thing I'll show you about this is at the bottom of this page, you can ask CompFile to show you 25, 50, 100, or all the entries. On this particular call, there are 958 cases. That sounds about right. You can expose 25 at a time and then just hit the next button here and scroll through them. You could look at all of them, or you can export them. So if you click on Excel, it would create an Excel list of these cases, or PDF would create a PDF list. And I have an example of that PDF right here. So this would be the status call on April the 16th for William McLaughlin, and the return to call date is it's a feature that's not turned on right now, so that's just showing blank at the moment. But it's going to be roughly sometime in July 16th, right around then. So this just shows you what you were looking at before, but it lists them in that sequence order. So just some highlights here. You're going to need to filter first. Let me just clear. Based on what's the setting and who's the arbitrator or commissioner. And then once you do that, then you'll narrow it down by, am I looking at an oral argument call? Am I looking at a review motion call, status call, or is this a trial date or a pretrial that I'm looking for? And then once you do that, then you'll be able to select the particular date for that call. So this is something that's hard to kind of watch and understand, but when you are able to get into the system and fool around with these filters, I think you're going to find this is very intuitive and going to be helpful to you for you to use. So let me pause there and see if there are any questions, Connor.
Can you show the examples of the kind of information you can type into the search box when you have a call sheet pulled up? Like, what are the kind of things that I can put in the search box?
Connor, help me out a little bit. Do you mean to filter down here?
Yeah, so like go like you're selecting a specific call date. Ooh,
Yeah, I think I think I didn't hit clear filters. There's a little clear filters button. Okay.
okay.
Yeah,
You
this
might
can
need to just refresh the
refresh.
page.
Yeah, let me refresh the page. There we go. So just give me a second. So let me go back down because I know Arbitrator McLaughlin's got some good. Yeah, so this basic filter, it's essentially going to show you all of the cases that Arbitrator McLaughlin has, period. But it doesn't give you much information here, so you need to further refine it by status call. And then if you're looking for a particular case, let's say it's the Otis case, OATIS. I see that that's coming, so I cheated a little bit. So you can type, I have to put a wildcard in front of it. No, I don't. There. So you just start typing Otis, OATIS, and you'll see that there are there are several cases that are, we want to do it on the 16th. So this particular case, it's on the call on April the 16th, and it's got a sequence number of 26, and it's a red line case. You can also search by case number. So, 07WC, there we go. And it just filters down. There's 2 cases that meet that criteria. So maybe 08. So I know my case that I'm interested in was from, 2018. So there we go. And maybe it was, so again, watching someone do this is only but so helpful. When you have access to this tool next week, I think you'll find that it's very intuitive and flexible for you. All right, well, we've run over a little bit, but Dave, I'm sure as long as everyone's willing, we can stick around for questions.
Yeah, certainly. And I've been going rapid fire here, trying to answer as many questions as possible. So we will hang on the line here and continue to answer your questions. And if we see something that we think warrants further discussion, we'll read out the question and discuss.
It sounds good.
I do want to make one note, and this was something that was outlined in the written materials. If you have consolidated cases, you should submit filings or documents only under the primary case number. And the primary case number is the case filed first with the lowest case number. So you would not need to submit filings separately under each case number. So again, I think that's an important point. For consolidated cases, you should submit filings and documents only under the primary case number. And that's the case filed first with the lowest case number. Again, if we miss something, please feel free to type in your question again and try to get it to the forefront, and we'll work to answer it.
So we got some questions about the old place you would go, right, to see your various call sheets, right? IWCC has a website now where we're essentially posting PDFs of the tower report and the various trial date sheets. I think the plan is that we will be taking those PDFs, those PDF exports that Matt just showed coming out of CompFile, and for the foreseeable future, we'll post those as a courtesy where you see them today, right? So you'll still have a place to go where you can find just a prepared PDF of a call sheet. It'll look different, but eventually it'll get to a point where IWCC won't be posting those, and you'll just come to this tool that was just demonstrated to search for cases on various call dates, trial dates, and if you want, you'll be able to generate your own PDF or your own Excel spreadsheet that you can then use, take with you to the call, keep for your own records, manage however you want.
We got a question about this, and it's another opportunity for me to make this announcement. For any status calls on or after May 10th, your motion must be filed in CompFile. If you've already if you've already emailed a motion to an arbitrator for a status call on or after May 10th, you must refile it in CompFile starting next Wednesday.
And Dave, just to add on to that, we haven't talked much about review motion calls because, obviously the vast majority of case activity has to do with arbitration cases, but review motion calls are a little different. You don't need to refile those motions because those will have been continued sometimes for many months, if not years. Those do not need to be refiled in CompFile. Once you've filed a review motion, it's going to be in CompFile, and that's going to be you don't need to refile that in order to get it docketed. That May the 10th noticing only applies to status calls. If you have filed a review motion, you do not need to refile it.
We got a question about an app that was filed recently since after 4.9. So the current process is that those applications should be are being routed to data entry. They're not being given a case number right now, but they're being routed to data entry. And what's going to happen is right before we go live with CompFile, all of those apps that were filed after 4.9 but before 4.21, those are going to be imported into CompFile and they'll be assigned a case number on 4.21. So when you log in, you will be able to claim that case, right? As though it were a legacy case, you'll be able to claim that case, and it'll have a case number, and you'll be able to do your work on it. And we'll have to figure out the logistics of getting those case numbers out there, but they will be assigned a case number and they will be available to you in CompFile. You will not need to file the app in CompFile again. I've got a question about appearances. We didn't cover them in depth today, but if you're filing an appearance in CompFile, and this is also true of a stipulated substitution, that the appearing party is added immediately to the case parties list. And once they're added, they'll be able to go in and review all previous filings made. and they will begin receiving notice of all future filings. So unless something happened where they're making the filing and their computer just bombs out and the filing doesn't get submitted, there shouldn't be any reason why somebody who submits an appearance in CompFile is not added to a case. We're getting some questions about case claiming. We did cover that in a couple of previous sessions. And there's also a brief video that was prepared by Trissy, our communications manager, that's available on the CompFile YouTube channel, and it walks through the process of claiming a case. So if you go to the CompFile implementation page, you'll be able to find a link to that video, and it talks about how to claim a case.
Connor, someone's asking about an app that was given a number on April the 9th, but it doesn't appear on the website. And I'm surprised at that. I think that if you have a number, that means that the mainframe or existing computer system created that number. And so it should appear on the website. So you might want to just contact the wcc.compfile@illinois.gov inbox with the case number, and we'll figure out why that doesn't show up on the website. But I do know that if you file an app today on paper, it's not going to appear on the existing website, but instead it will appear on the CompFile case search, because the mainframe has been taken down while we migrate all the data over to CompFile. All those apps that were filed in that interim period, as Connor was saying, they will be filed in CompFile. You don't need to refile them, and you'll get your number and your notice of case assignment from CompFile shortly after 421. And if you already answered that, and I was typing your answer, Connor, I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Someone's saying they want to drop off an app today. You can do that, but you won't get a number or a case assignment today, but it'll happen soon after 421.
No, the numbers are being issued.
Oh, okay.
They get
Sorry.
stamped at the desk.
Oh, sorry, Dave. So that's why that person on 4/9, it was given a number. So it was after the mainframe was taken down, and it was given a number, but it won't be fully processed until 421 with the arbitrator assignment.
You will, correct. As Connor indicated, you will have to complete the case claiming process for that case at the time of go live. If you filed an app and received a case number, you will use the case claiming process at go live.
Thanks, Dave. Sorry about the confusion.
I would just say that you are free to file an app between now and 421 on paper. I would suggest, highly suggest, wink wink, that unless you're up against the statute of limitations, that you would just wait until CompFile goes live on the 21st to file that app, just because it's going to save you a little bit of time of having to then go in and claim the case versus just filing the app carte blanche in CompFile. And plus, it's good practice for filing apps in CompFile.
This is a question. A petition for review was filed on paper. So you will file that authenticated transcript on paper. So if the petition for review is filed on paper and the return date is in May, you're going to file that on paper. So the simple rule of thumb on that is if the petition for review was filed on paper, you will file the paper transcript and the authentication on paper. PFR on paper, transcript on paper, authentication on paper.
Okay, it looks like we're getting to a little bit of a lull here. I want to thank everyone again for joining us. We did record this session and it will be made available hopefully a little later today. There will be a link to a recording of this session on our website. So take the time to go back and rewatch this session. Again, please go to our website for updated training materials, both written materials and instructional videos that have been produced that explain a lot of these same topics that we discussed today. If there are any questions that you might have, please feel free to send us an email at wcc.compfile@illinois.gov. And we do have some additional question and answer sessions that we have scheduled for just after the go live date. So those dates and times are posted on our website today. And once you've had an opportunity to get in the system and use it a little bit, we encourage everybody to attend one of those sessions, and we will make ourselves available to answer any questions and maybe run through some quick demos if necessary. So again, appreciate everybody taking the time to join us this afternoon, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.